Hi, welcome to the Corpus Christi Songwriters Podcast. I'm Jules.
I'm Jimmy.
And y'all, I'm Walt. Howdy.
Hey, we got Walt hanging out with us today, man. He is the headliner of our Songwriter Festival coming up in February.
No, he was our headliner in for the 2023 festival.
He was our headliner for the 2020.
I just got a gig and then lost it immediately.
Oh no! Hey, you want a gig?
Yes. I love that event. I had a great time both times, but especially last year. I really had a great time last year.
Oh yeah, yeah. You've played. Was it 2019? You were a headliner. I think it was the year before.
I'm terrible at remembering years, but I remember that was the second time.
Yeah, I think it was the festival before the festival that went under the wire before COVID. So
right,
everything these days is gauged by when did it happen according to COVID, and so
right.
That's
AC, or BC.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us, for the listener that may have absolutely no idea who Walt Wilkins is, tell us a little about yourself.
Okay. Well, I'm a songwriter and performing songwriter. I've done it full time for 30 years, but I've been in bands since I was 14. I mean, that's just the thing I've loved the most always. And I knew I would write songs early. I live outside of Austin. I actually grew up in Austin, but I moved away, of course, at 18. Moved back here 19 years ago with my wife and son. My wife, who I met in Nashville, and my son, who was born there. But we moved here when he was just shy of turning 3. And we're in this home now, still in this home, right here in the suburbs of Austin, a little town called Cedar Park. And so I still play. I just did my taxes, so I know that last year I played 175 shows. I think it's going to land right on that again this year. Before that, it was for about 10 years. I was hitting 200 every year, so I'm kind of glad for fewer shows. At my age,
I bet. Yeah,
I'll turn 63 in 10 days. So,
oh wow, happy early birthday!
Thank you. And so it's a great life, and I've had a bunch of songs recorded by other people, friends, and then some in major label. I was in Nashville for 10 years, where I had publishing deals, and that led to some really cool cuts. I never had the hit, that would change everything, but there's some blessings to that too.
Right.
And that's why I still love it. I produce records for other folks too, usually 2 or 3 a year. And then play my gigs with various lineups. I had a band for 14 years called the Mystiqueros, and we decided almost 4 years ago that was enough. So I get to play with all sorts of people. It's great fun.
That's wonderful. When you first got into music, what was the draw? Was it writing songs immediately, or how did you come about that?
My dad had a great record collection. He really loved music. And in fact, some of his records are sitting right over here where I can see him, Glenn Campbell. He loved music. It's what made him happy. And so who knows why some of us love music more than other people. And somehow it seems natural to do it. But I was always drawn to lyrics from a family of readers. We had books everywhere, and I read. And I knew I wanted to be a writer even as a kid. Wrote poems, wrote a couple of plays in elementary school. Seriously. And so I was always writing. And then I knew I wanted to write songs when I was 13 or 14. Growing up in Austin, that's the age that I was corresponded to that hippie cosmic cowboy era here.
Right.
And my folks were real cool about dropping me off at shows before I could drive. And as soon as I could drive, man, I was going to see shows all the time.
So when did you record your first album?
The first record I did here in Austin, first of all, I did a cassette of a few songs. That's how old I am. In 91, the first full-length project on a CD was 93.
93?
And I started on it the day after I quit my job at the state. I had a job there for 4 years that I really dug. But I had an offer to go to Nashville and sign a publishing deal. Someone who had heard me up there. And so I quit my job on August 18th of 93 and went to the studio the next morning to start the record.
That's fantastic. And I'm just going through your discography on your website, and it's only listened down to 2007, I think. So are those early records unavailable, or?
Well, except I think online, online I don't have CDs or anything else of those. I'm looking at my discography, which I keep in the back of my calendar. So if I ever have a question about when things happen, I've started a record that I'm working on now. So before this one, there are 9 solo records A tent is a compilation of songs recorded by other people or that I've sung and been on the radio and stuff. Collaborations with my wife, one with her, one with Kevin Welch, and then 4 with the Mystiqueros.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Tell me about the Mystiqueros.
Well, when I came back from Nashville, I just had a goal I wanted to be as good as I could be and be one of the people in the state who were great at just sitting there with a guitar and playing solo. But Madsen Rayner at KBT, the great radio station there in New Braunfels, he wanted me. I played his festival a few years solo, and he said, "You need to bring a band." So I put a band together. And we literally, for the first year, I just put a band together of friends and who played in other bands. And then the second year, he wanted a band again, and a couple of guys that I'd gotten to know better. We did a band. We walked off stage, and everybody went, "All right, let's do this." And so we did. And that was awesome. Our first gig, the 5 of us, and it started a real adventure. You know, it was awesome. We traveled all over the country and in Europe. We had a lot of fun.
And has it been the same 5 people in the lineup ever since?
No. It's the same.
I was going to say that would be a miracle.
Yeah, it would be a miracle. No, it's just, I think that the original lineup lasted about 5 years, and then there were some changes 2 or 3 years, but we ended up pretty stable with a guitar player, Corby Schaub, piano player, Ron Flynt, and then Ray Rodriguez on drums and Bill Small on bass, and me. We were together the whole time.
That's great.
Yeah.
I was thinking about like another songwriter, like a guy like Steve Earle, and Steve Earle's been doing it a very long time, but he's also been, a sober guy for like 20 years. And I feel like, I've got guys like 2 or 3 years into sobriety myself that I talk to, but I know that people that have been sober for longer than that have people that they speak to that have longer durations in that world, right? So I feel like in a way, like in talking to you now, man, and having the opportunity to ask questions, I want to ask questions out of like something that a songwriter that's been doing this for 30 years might have, bits of wisdom to impart there. And I think maybe as an entryway towards this, man, I feel like as a songwriter, you write your first kind of 100 songs that you don't ever let anybody hear, and then maybe you have these songs that stand the test of time, but for you in performances, they're audience tested, road tested, etc. Right? And maybe at a certain point, you get to know that moment of when you have written something that will fare well in front of audiences, that will fare well over time. I think that indication in the writing process might appear differently to you at year 5 into writing songs than year 25. Could you maybe speak to some of the differences of like year 5 versus like where you are now in your songwriting career? Like when you write a song now and it's a good song, what does that feel like now compared to maybe what that might have felt like back then?
Jules, that's a really cool question. They are certainly relationships, and your point about writing a bunch of bad songs before you get the first good one. Yeah, I think that's pretty common to everybody. I was fortunate, and then I started trying to write songs in high school with my high school band. I wrote a couple that we performed. Of course, they were awful, but man, I was always really serious about being a student of that. I mentioned my dad's record collection. The records he loved the most were these Glenn Campbell records out of the 60s. And the Glenn Campbell records in the late 60s, when he became just a huge superstar, they were filled with songs that you couldn't say country. He and a guy named Al DeLore, who I met years later in Nashville, they just picked out songs from every genre. It was a great song. They're filled with great songs. And they famous for recording some songs by Jimmy Webb, Galveston. By the time I get to Phoenix, Wichita Alignment, Jimmy Webb wrote those. And man, if those songs is what you're soaking up as a 7, 8, 9-year-old, 12, those are pretty good songs to get in your psyche. So I wrote bad songs for sure, and I didn't write a lot. I went to school, did some other stuff, but it's true. When I wrote a song at 24, I knew it was song 1. And I remember that day thinking, this is the first song. Now I've started.
Yeah.
And that song got recorded by Pat Green, who was on the radio in Texas everywhere. So that was a cool lick to start out with.
Oh, I bet. And
yeah, it was cool. It's a really cool deal for me,
For any songwriter starting out right now, what would you tell them to hang on if they, aren't getting to that level?
Go to law
Yeah.
school. No, I told him go to law school. Go
Yeah.
be a veterinarian or
No.
something.
Yeah. No, I don't. I think the world needs artists, of every stripe, every kind. So I'd say you got to keep, if you're called for it, but if you're really called to it, you don't quit anyway.
Right.
I mean, if that had not happened, if I had no success, I would have worked for the state and done this for fun and written songs and hoped someone would. I remember having a goal when I was 20, thinking, man, if one person records one of my songs by the time I'm 40, I'll be so happy. But once that happened, I got greedier, Plus,
Of course.
I was lucky that back when Nashville was giving out publishing deals a lot more freely than they do now, I was in that wave. I got signed by going up and visiting. He called me, heard of the cassette I did, called me up. I went up and met with him. And 2 years later, I quit my job and took the publishing deal. Meant that I was getting a little bit of money every month so I could write songs all the time.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, I thought that question, Jules' question, was really interesting. As you get older, of course, everything changes, how you write, what you expect of yourself. Once you've written a song that you think is good, then you want that. You don't want to write bad songs anymore. You can put a lot of pressure on yourself. Having said that, when I was in Nashville, I wrote a lot of shit that I hope no one hears, just co-writing is such the culture there. And a lot of those times you're not having fun and you just kind of do what you can to get out of the meeting, finish a song, button it up, and then get the hell out. And I surely did that a couple of hundred times over 10 years. But they are interesting too. I've come to realize there are relationships with these things. You guys both know you have a song that you like and you sing it. You perform it for maybe a year, 2 years, 5 years, and it drops off. And then you might rediscover it later down the road, and then it speaks to you in a different way. So they're like relationships. It all changes as you get older, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I know it's all subjective too, what artists consider good, right?
Completely subjective. You have,
I have known countless performers that have gone through their waves of like, I'm giving it all up. I'm done performing. It's just not worth it. And then they come back to it eventually. But songwriting is something that, most people never give up because they can just do it privately in their bedroom or wherever. And so that's the art or the beauty of the art.
Yeah. A friend in Nashville, a guy named Bill Hames said, art is opinion. So you have to get used. It's a great way great thing to remember when you get rejected, which you will surely do. If you make art of any kind, you're not going to score every time. So.
Of course. Now, I doubt that you do now. And this is I almost hate asking this question, but did you start with a formula? A lot of songwriters, when they really get into the nitty gritty of it, they think about formula. And is that something that you pay attention to or used to? Or
I still do. I think it's good. I don't do a lot of workshops for young people or anything like that, but I do one a year. And I always say it's good to know some of the ways songs are constructed, because some of those are there for a reason. I went through the Nashville system for a long time. So I had to know the rules. The rule was verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's just how I was there in the 90s, and that's how 3/4 of the songs were written. In fact, when I'd been at B&G for 4 years and they got a new boss, she brought me in. She was meeting with all the writers. She brought me in. She goes, obviously we think you're great. You wouldn't be here. We think your time's coming. You're going to get hits. We're not worried about that. But, we think you need to write more in that model. So I'd like to renew your contract, but you have to promise me you're just going to write verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, every song. That's all you're going to hand in for a year.
Wow.
And I said, man, I can't do that. That doesn't sound fun. And that's not who you signed. I didn't do that coming here. Otherwise, why would you sign me? And so I said, no, thanks, and left thinking, oh, man, well, it's over. My 4 years in Nashville's over. I'll go home, just put a band together, playing, whatever. And she called that night and said, all right, I'm going to renew you. Just try to write more like normal songs.
Wow.
Which I did.
Wow.
Which I didn't, and it didn't work out. So, but it's good to know it. It's good to know the rules so you can bend them. when
Of
you want
course.
to, and and the changes have some meaning, but they don't have a meaning if you're doing it in a cloud. You have to, if you know some of the construct of how certain songs go, then you can play with it, for reasons, your own reason. That's my feeling about it.
Oh yeah,
I'm from a country world, like I said, those songs and Glen Campbell records. I like we all did, soaked up from the radio and records. There's a chorus and there's a verse, and then later on you figure out what the bridge is and all. So we all know the basic. The framework.
We're basically brainwashed into it by listening to whatever's on pop music radio.
Yeah,
for the past
but
100 years at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. But the reason songs are like that is they have a meaning. They have a use of doing that. Songs are meant to be shorter for radio, for records, for performances. We're talking about 5,000 years of songs. There's a reason that they are the way they are, to remember things, the message is short. Songs are generally about one thing. So yeah, I can honor that system. I'm not a rebel. I just want to have each song do what the song and I decide it should do. But
right. And I had a music mentor here in Corpus Christi. His name was Fred Jarmon. And he is very similarly said, learn the rules. This is just music theory and also just songwriting. Because he was originally hired to teach me lead guitar. And then after the 20 minutes into that first lesson, he's like, you're not interested in lead guitar, are you? And I'm like, no. And so it became basically just songwriting 101 for about a year. And we listened to songs on the radio, listen to songs I'm writing, and like, why did you go there? Why did you do this? And it all broke down to learn the rules so later you can break them.
Yeah.
And I always held that close to my heart.
Yeah.
What's funny, Walt, that you mentioned that like your influences. You mentioned Glen Campbell a couple times here, right? Glen Campbell was always the John Hartford,
Yeah. There you go. See, they picked great songs, man.
Right. And so like, for listeners, Gentle on My Mind was like a John Hartford song. And
Yes.
you go back and you listen to those old John Hartford records, he's got these really cheesy string lines that appear cheesy on first listening. And the more you listen, the more devastating those string tones are between like John's sort of haunting melodies and beautiful lyrics,
He was fantastic.
And that's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. Gentle on My Mind is just, to me, one of the greatest songs ever got into the psyche. Yeah. It's just perfect.
Yeah.
And it's better than perfect. It's like I'm so lonesome I can cry. It's perfectly crafted. Yeah. But it also, every line paints a picture and has emotion. It's really amazing.
And there's so many lyrics in that song too, that it's like, it's a brainful to memorize. It's just incredible. Yeah. When I see people like Molly Tuttle cover that, or, a Texas artist, Vincent Neil Emerson, covered that song during like a band break where he did a few acoustic songs. I saw him in Fort Worth, and Vincent Neil is like doing great stuff with Charlie Crockett now. I think he just opened for Susan Tedeschi at Red Rocks.
Cool.
But what I'm saying is, so the John Hartford thing, right? We're talking about a guy who was a tap dancing, banjo playing fiddler, and
a real riverboat captain.
A real riverboat captain.
He had his license for all that.
So like the sort of musical and melodic eccentricities this guy offers as an artist, right, are what are shining through, I feel like, in your musical influences, and yet they're telling you to write in this verse, chorus, bridge, chorus formula. Whereas like the reason why that formula was being instantiated then as a sort of modern tone was because to that point, I understand that like writers typically tried to write a chorus first and presented a chorus and said, hey, we like that chorus or we don't like that chorus, develop this, don't develop that. And so that shifted, and that's why we had that older type of song structure where it was like hook first and then it kind of went into a verse, So it's like what I'm hearing out of the story from you is that this modern structure of the verse, chorus, bridge, chorus took a concerted effort in Nashville, and they were pushing writers to do this sort of thing. Whereas I think guys like you were opting to sort of, let the brick be what it wants to be. Like
some songs don't want to do that, but having said all that, believe me, I wrote hundreds of songs at bridge, chorus. Verse, chorus, chorus.
Yeah. I mean, I'm 40. I lived in Nashville for 10 years, and man, like to deviate from verse, chorus, bridge, chorus in my world is to take a great risk. It feels like in my mindset, like that's where I live, and that's what I try to write into. So that it's just really fascinating telling me about, as I listen to this as the chorus.
And also, one of my passions in life is history, and I'm really down into European history right now. I mean, like it's my hobby, but it's like I'm in it every day doing something. The songwriting that we know started developing in that time when songs, there's classical music, of course, at the time through all that era, and choral music, beautiful church. It was mostly church music. But man, people were on the streets just like us, going up and down the alleys, playing guitar or playing lute or whatever culture you're in. And they were making this form, shortening these long, rambling songs that happened before that in different cultures. They were shortening it up so they were easier to remember. So the next time they went down the alley, 2 weeks later, the same alley, someone said, play that song about the sword fight or the dog, or, they were starting that workforce. That's when the actual troubadours, that word was first used, and where that happened, they're coming out around the year 1000. Right. So they were helping to create this form that we still use every day. We want to be, you want to present a message where it's memorable and it makes the point and people remember it, because that's what we're all trying to do, I guess, is just have our stuff remembered.
Oh, definitely. That's the goal anyway.
So I want to ask about because I feel like sometimes the best way to get at a writer is like through the stuff they read, man. Like you were talking about how you're from a family of readers. And so my mom's an English teacher, so that really resonates with me. Like awesome. what are some book titles or authors
I have a whole, when I talk to someone young, and when I produced people, I've said, and even bought books for people, you buy them Letters to a Young Poet by Rilke, which is very hard to read. My God, it's just incredible. But I think everyone should read Grapes of Wrath, and every aspiring writer of any kind should read as much Hemingway as they can stomach, because he was such a genius at brevity, and that's our challenge all the time as writers. We're trying to say a lot in the fewest words possible. And Hemingway it changed writing. He was just such a master of it. So everyone should read The Sun Also Rises, For Whom the Bells Toll. If you want to write, I think you should have some Hemingway and Steinbeck. And my favorite novelist, a guy named Walker Percy. And he had a huge effect on me. So he's not well known in the general populace, but just a very unique writer from Mississippi and Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on it with the first thing you listed, but I was as a poet, who's your go-to poet to just read, or do you search out new poetry on a daily basis?
All the time. I love poems. We have probably half dozen Billy Collins books here on our poetry shelf, and then Wendell Berry, Kentucky guy, is just crazy. And then as far as classical poetry, Yeats is my favorite for what that's worth. But there's so many great ones. John Donne, people who in English, and we were told of, in high school, if you took any kind of English class, and Shakespeare, his poems were incredible. He wrote poems mostly before he started writing plays. And they're not that I sit down most of the days and read a poem. I don't, sadly, which is not part of our deal, but I sure had a huge effect on me.
And do you think your love of poetry feeds into your lyric writing?
Every day. Yeah. If you're going to read Billy Collins, then your level of what you expect from yourself goes up. Put better stuff you put in your head, Oh
yeah. Understanding, meter and all of that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah. Meter, rhythm, rhyme schemes. I was just thinking, this looks like a cocktail. It's not. I barely drink during the day. This is ginger tea mixed with orange juice. I just wanted to make that clear.
Well, thank you. It looks really good. And it reminded me actually, when you played the Songwriters Festival this year, you had this drink that you spilled on stage and someone brought you a new one. And it was like your concoction that you made up this concoction. Do you remember what that was?
I do. This
is for selfish reasons because it looked really good and I really want to try it.
It's orange juice, ginger beer, and tequila.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. During COVID, I started looking at what cocktails to make, although I never drank before 6 ever, even during COVID. I always worked every day. But I found that and then kept goofing with it until I got the perspective I really liked. So
Nice.
we called it got your Kennedy drinking when he called it an afternooner, but that didn't work for me because I don't drink in the afternoon. But what did I call it? Oh, jueves, because I would have a big one this size on Thursdays right before Tina and I would do our online show on Thursday nights, which we did for the whole COVID period for a whole year.
That's right.
So that drink is the jueves.
Wonderful. Speaking of you and Tina, I wanted to ask about the Walt Stalk and Barrel Festival.
It was great. We did 5 of them. We did 3, and then COVID hit. So the first year of COVID, we did an online version like everyone did things. We had learned how to do those. We did it. And the next year, kind of the year 2 of COVID, it was opening up, but we couldn't we moved it all inside. And it didn't feel like we lost our original location. So we moved into another place inside, and we just could never find a location as good as the first one. So that's the main reason we didn't do it. We haven't done it since then. I don't know. We'll do something like that again. It's possible. Because sure, they were great times.
Oh yeah.
I liked our festival a lot because it was a great mix of all kinds of music.
I mean, yeah, every time I saw posts about it, I was jealous that not that I wasn't playing, but that I wasn't there. Like it's just a lot of friends, a lot of just amazing songwriters performing. And
so everyone that I've got is someone I knew from our travels that we met all over the country and in Europe. We had a couple of people over from Europe. So we wanted to make it different. And it was really fun.
So tell me a little bit about the Netherlands. That's a unique thing.
It's my second home. It's go there every fall. I spent 4 weeks there this year. It happened because in 2004 I produced Sam Baker's first record, and 2 years later did the second record. Those records caught on with the guy that programs BBC radio.
Oh.
Channels 1 and 2. These are massively important radio stations in the UK and Netherlands and beyond. Right. I mean, there are people. His name's Bob Harris, and he fell in love with Sam's records and not only played them on his stations, but did interviews with him. It really moved Sam's profile forward really quickly. So Sam was asked to play the major Americana festival in the Netherlands and one of the major ones in Northern Europe. And so he wanted the whole band to go. So the Mystiqueros went with him. And we played the festival and made quite a splash. It was just a really special set we did. And from there, he started going every year. And the next year I went with him. And then when I was just out on the road, just playing guitar with him and singing, because I knew the songs well, I produced them. I just started meeting people on my own, and then people wanting my records. And that led to me going on my own. So I go every year. I really love it over there.
Oh, that's a dream come true for me. I've always wanted to make my way over there. Oh yeah.
Well, you got to do it. Just do it. I don't know. It's easier for me to say, just do it.
It's good advice. I should just do it. Yeah.
But if you can, the first time I went to Europe, it was overwhelming. Like, oh my God. And people were like, keep your money. You got to have this place, put your money, keep it, Like they've made it sound overwhelmingly hard. And really, you're buy a plane ticket just like you're going to New York or California or Wichita, Kansas. You get on a plane, you get off the plane, and people are pretty great and help you. In the Netherlands, most everyone speaks English really well. And Belgium is the same. I love Belgium. So it led to I didn't see it coming. That trip with Sam was when I was 44. So that was when I first started a life in Europe,
That's amazing. Yeah. No. Well, maybe next year I'll just do it.
Yeah, I hope you do. It's just because everyone should see it anyway, because that's where our culture, our immediate culture, is from Western Europe. Northwestern Europe in particular.
Yeah, I mean that's where way over there Western civilization all began, and we have a little bits and pieces of it over here. So,
same here.
But yeah, I've been all over the United States, save for like Alaska and I think Massachusetts. But it just drives me crazy. I haven't been overseas yet. So when I saw you were in the Netherlands, I was like, oh, I want to hear all about that.
Right above me is this great Mark Twain quote on my wall. And I found it to be true. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all of one's lifetime.
Wow.
So it's a famous Mark Twain quote, but
I love that you have it pinned up to your board there.
Yeah, it's a big part of our lives. Our son's been to Europe once. He loves to travel. We took him on the road with us even when he was small, and Tina's been to Europe a lot. So it's a big deal to us to travel.
For sure.
It's a big world, and it's a beautiful world.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I learned about it. I think people who are well educated and well traveled kind of fall into the same group. They're less narrow minded. And I think that's very important to experience. To experience means that you just automatically know more.
Yes.
To be clear, one could theoretically be well educated and well traveled and yet still persist in being an asshole.
That is also very true.
It can happen.
It's more likely.
They're not like virtues or something. We're not like
right.
if you stay at home and you're a nice guy, I'd rather hang out with you in a lot, than a well traveled. Anyway, but yeah, no. Let me take it back to brother. Like, let me ask you about like your sort of daily writing habits, if you will, because like I think of someone like a Stephen King, and I don't know that I can be like a Stephen King type writer who like wakes up and writes
every day
pages no matter what every day. Like 5 a.m. That's when he does it, right? Do you have like a set sort of discipline that you fall into in the style of how you go about writing, or how do you approach that, man? To stay.
I don't have a regular. When I lived in Nashville, I was co-writing 3, 4, 5 days a week. That was it. Get together with someone at 10 o'clock, right till middle of the afternoon, and then you're working on it, what you did that day. Then that was very structured, but mostly by my own nature and the way I do now, it's not structured. I'm writing in my head all the time. But as far as sitting down and I don't. And I usually wait till I have a song in motion before I even pick up a guitar and start kind of flesh it out.
Does that stuff come to you like lyrics, melody, everything kind of at once? Like
mostly,
right?
Yeah,
right?
It's mostly 2 lines, melody and lyric.
And it's like the opening 2 lines maybe that are...
Yes. It's so often it starts, at least in the first part, it seems like they're the opening lines.
Right.
And then as it grows, as you guys work it out, the song, it shifts. But yeah, I'm the same. Yeah.
I'm notorious for going months, sometimes even longer, without writing a song. It's just, but like you said, it's all percolating up there, and then I write 3 songs in one day. And it's
I don't think when people say you have to do this, I'm like, you have to shut up, because we all have our own way of doing this. It's no one's business how you do it. I don't see it right or wrong.
No, definitely not.
As we get older, as we write more, as we maybe take more text in, more ideas and stuff like that, it seems like the things that we as writers should become fewer and fewer, and possibly, hopefully, better, more refined, more impactful, more powerful, etc. Right? Do you find that like in expecting more of yourself, you allow less writing out? Like, is there less that makes it to the surface now?
Yeah, what great question. Yeah, I do. I write less because I know at this point I have to. It's got to be a certain level for me and the folks who pay to come out. They'd be disappointed if I came up with a new group of songs that was like didn't sound like everyone else. I also think, and this is the one thing I said, or other writers, I think the idea is, we're building this thing as we go, who we are, and the idea ultimately is you're finding. Like I always ask myself in songs, what am I trying to say? This line's missing. This part's missing. What am I trying to say? What can I say that sounds like I'm saying it as I go through life? That's what we're trying to do, is bring our own voice. There's no subjects that haven't been sung about or written about, So we're trying to put new lights on these things. And I think that great songs are when we use our, we say something the way that only we would say that. And that's when, and at that point, once you bring them hundreds of songs, that's what interests me. So I'm just trying to get it down to that.
No, for sure.
And it's harder than just writing, the song you might hear on country radio these days or forever. I don't know. I mean, we're talking about, I love talking about books and poetry. Man, I tell everyone, you gotta have a working knowledge of Hank Williams. I mean, he invented this.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you do.
And he just didn't, she was so good.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I think about Hank Williams, man, and I think about, I don't know, man. It seems like he had a woman in his life that tormented him, and a lot of these.
Oh, yeah. Two of them.
Right? Two of them, right?
We had three. His mom was crazy. His first wife was crazier, and then the young third wife at the end, not very good for him either. So he had a lot of problems.
Yeah. I wonder, man, just I grew up with like a dad who played a lot of classic country stuff. So like, in terms of like when I think of writing and like titles or a hook book or something, man, like some of I still remember looking at a list of Hank Williams songs and thinking at a young age, like, my son calls another man daddy is an acceptable song title. Yeah.
Right.
Like that sort of thing, and so that led me later on in terms of writing as something that I would ask in sharing this if there's something akin to this that you kind of keep as like your own sort of personal recipe or your own kind of personal toolkit that way. But like, I had a thought once that maybe one should reserve the most horrific thing one has to say for the most beautiful melody. And so I feel like sometimes that's usually like the last line of a second verse before the second chorus kind of thing. You have kind of the most flexibility with how you can say something devastating, but is there something akin to that sort of?
That's a great question. I don't know that I don't know. I do know that the second verse should be the greatest part of a song. You've introduced a song, you give us a chorus. And if those are done right, like Hank and Merle, sometimes that's all you need, a verse and a chorus. Haggard has dozens of songs like that. So if you're going to write a second verse, man, make it killer. If you're in a song that you really care about that's heavier, man, the second verse is great.
I think of a guy like Jason Isbell, who like once an album finds a clever rhyme with a drug, like he rhymes like methamphetamine or something. Well,
he's great. Yeah.
Now, not to get off topic with that there, but I wanted to bring up, is it Jumping Dog Studio?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you're a producer as well, not just a songwriter and performer, but you produce other artists. I wanted to get your take on studio. We had an interesting conversation with a previous guest about how he uses the studio and basically hates the studio. And he would only record live. That was his only way to do it. And again, it's subjective. It's from artist to artist, but how do you utilize the studio as a tool?
I love being in the studio. I think about all these records that we grew up with that made us do this. They were recorded in most of them in studios. The Glenn Campbell records, they were in those great Los Angeles studios of the mid and late '60s with the Wrecking Crew, which was the band, the revolving band that played on thousands of records, including those. The studio is just a great tool. It's where you get the sounds that you want to use to express what you're trying to get. I love being in the studio. I'm not even an engineer. I'm not technical. I don't have this deep working knowledge of microphones or anything. I like the arranging part of it. And trying to get down when I'm working with some, just trying to figure out what do they have to offer that we need to get to the front. How do we get that personality out? What makes them them? And then try to change their lives a little bit, with a record. Otherwise, it's a lot of money. It's even though the recording is something that the price stays pretty constant and has for 30 years, it's still a lot of money. It's a dream vacation. You could go to Greece, or wherever in the world you could go. You can do it for $10,000 to $15,000 because that's what it takes generally to get. Unless it's just you and the guitar, and you can do that really cheaply. But man, all the records that we grew up with, they were in studios, and they're I love being in the studio. It's fun.
Oh, yeah.
And Jumping Dog is a very comfortable place. And my partner, Ron Flynt, it's his studio. And he's also a great guy, beautiful spirit, and an incredible musician, and does have technical knowledge that I don't have.
And Jumping Dog Studio is located
in North Austin.
North Austin.
Yeah,
fantastic. And when you're working with artists, when you're starting, I guess, the journey as a producer with them, do you prefer them bring the songs to you fleshed out already, or do you like to journey along with them?
I like both. I just see whatever's comfortable for them. I mean, if they have things if they've been making records for all I've worked with Mike Blakely a couple of times. Now, he's who I consider one of the great songwriters. Texas, they don't talk about him enough.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike, are you familiar with him?
I've heard his stuff, yes.
Yeah, he's just fantastic. He's done it a long time. I let him tell me what he sees, and then I try to make it happen. But if someone doesn't have quite an idea, then I enjoy the process of arranging and deciding the instruments and things like that. I just try to meet people where they are. It's not my project. I always say to people, your name's on the front. I'm back on small lettering. So I'm here to make what you want to do and bring my experience to make that happen.
Of course. And I'm sorry, I'm jumping on this producer, bandwagon here, but I grew up wanting to be a producer, and that was a huge thing of mine. And then the more I got into it, that's one of the arts I lost along the way. But I've known producers that they just love layering and overproducing, and the ones that just let the songs speak for themselves, and then everything in between. I guess, again, I keep coming back to the word subjective. I guess it's all project to project, but what's your favorite thing? Do you like having albums that let the music and the lyrics speak for themselves, or do you like exploring interesting arrangements? And
but I'm working with songwriters all the time, and so songwriters, like you just said it's about the song. And it's about their voice. When you get down to a record, how someone sings is 75% of what people are going to respond to. So you want to work with someone who can sing. And, I sing no quite a bit if I don't get it. And then, I'm aging out of some things, some things are just kind of, you're too young for me to do. But I sure like songs. And so I can respond to songs and live in those songs with the artist, try to just get their voice sounding as best we can, and find the performance that I usually try to see someone live a few times before we get in the studio. When I have time, it's like a lot of conversations, because I want it to be really clear when we go in what's expected of me, and it's fun too. I mean, it should be fun. It's torturous for some people. I don't get the studio, but not me. I like it. I like being there.
And I do love that you brought up that you want to go see them live a few times before you're in the studio with them, because it's so easy to lose that magic that you have on stage in the studio. So you should be chasing that magic and make sure that you capture it in the studio. Yeah.
And it's amazing how people can sing differently live. And then when they get in the studio, you're like, now let's try to get that person, when I heard it the other night, let's get that. Let's get you comfortable. Let's get you thinking about which gets you in that place, But it's songs and it's the voice, the personality in the songs. That's what we want to get.
How can you? I wonder that, man. Like in my capacity as like a producer, I feel like it's like you have to go and understand what that person does live. But it's rarely something that I hear out of producers when you approach them about that stuff. Like, oh, well, let me come see you live. Is not something you typically hear out of those guys, No. The both people records I did this year. One is Mark Douglas Ferraro, guy I know in Rhode Island, and he's a mainstay of the New England folk and Americana scene, and I played with him a lot. So when we got, I really had a great knowledge of his voice, and what he's trying to do, and his personality. That's helpful. And then Claudia Gibson, I'd seen her play a half dozen times before we got in the studio this year.
Oh, I had no idea you were working with Claudia. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And she's one of my favorite songwriters, actually.
Is that right? Well, this new it's done, so she should be. I don't know when she released it. I can't remember what she said, but it's a wonderful record. Really.
We loved having her at this year's festival.
Yeah. She played her set with Terry. I remember watching it.
That's right. I have a couple more questions, but do you have anything, Jules, before I dive into those?
I kind of have a question that might not have an apropos or something, man, but But like in your capacity as a producer, you know, and all the things that you do and are conscientious towards, man, like given an option, like if an artist came to you and said, hey, I've got this idea that's still being sketched out for a reaching and ambitious project versus here's like the best songs I've written, you know, just a list of the best songs. Like which one of those should an artist possibly like? I mean, I know it's kind of a setup of a question, right? Like which one, the list of your absolute best songs or your reaching and ambitious sort of concept. And I know there's a lot of variables artist to artist. So but I'm just curious as to like that fork in the road, which way you would advise Joe the artist.
I think most of us know when we go in which songs speak to us. I try to, if you go in and you record, I never choose songs for someone. I always say, you have to choose the songs. I'll tell you what I think of them. That's what you're paying me to do. And I'll suggest things like, you sure this line is you sure this is the best you can do on this line? Can you, I don't do a lot of that, but I'll do it. But ultimately, an artist, if this song speaks to you, can you imagine playing it for the next 20 years? That's a good test for it. Does this song speak to you? You feel like this is what is this what you want to say to the world? Think about you playing live. Is this the song you want? Not to say every song you record needs to be played live. God, it doesn't. But I want someone to be excited about the songs. In fact, not this year, but the year before, there was an artist, and we got into the studio, and for the really only the first time ever, this artist wanted me to pick the song. I kept saying, no, you got to pick the songs. And then anyway, it didn't work out. We did stay in the studio, and for the first time, we just agreed not to go on, that our visions were different, even though we talked had tried to talk quite a bit, but it doesn't always work. But I just think you can tell when they sing it, they like the song. God, Claudia, she's so good. She's such a great guitar player, very expressive singer. You could tell if she wasn't into a song. You got the artist has to be into it. It's their passion that's going to go sell this record and sell the songs on the road. Not me. I'll do my best to box it up in a way that gets it in the world. But the artist needs to, and they're all people I work with, songwriters, they know when they've got the song.
Of course. Well, sometimes I think that a lot of I've experienced this, and I have other musician friends who've experienced this as well, where they're in the studio and next thing you know, they're writing other songs because they're inspired by you being in the studio. And you have all these songs that you're going to record, but now you're really excited about these new songs.
I hate that shit, man. Oh my God. I mean, it's great. How can you get mad at an artist for writing new stuff?
That's what like I was going to say. That's good news. That's a good problem. There's nothing wrong with that.
Now the quandary. I'm sorry, the quandary is like, do you save those songs for another recording, or do you try to?
You'll see. By that time, you fleshed out how many songs you're going to have, because you got to have. When I go in, I got to say, I got to know roughly how many songs, because I got a budget. Right, this is the budget I'm given, so I've got I do have some limitations about what I do. No, I think when someone writes a song, the most memorable one that ever happened is Kylie Ray Harris, when we were recording, brought in a song that I thought, this is her first great song. I would play the song, and I have played the song before, a song of hers called Change. And it was like watching someone who had been in the studio by that time a week, and all of a sudden gave her that confidence, and the juice was flowing and all these things. And she came in one day and said, I wrote a song last night. Boom. And it was like watching a flower actually just open up. And I called the band. I said, who can get here tonight? And we recorded that night or the next day, I forget. Yeah, I've heard so many stories, and then also from my own experience, that those songs, if you do end up recording them for that record, tend to be like the hit songs or the songs that people listen to the most. There's got to be something to that. You're in the energy. The wave of energy, wave of inspiration. Yeah, absolutely.
As much as I feel like that inspiration, that wave is something that is like gifted to you by a muse, and one should follow it and honor it, all that stuff. Part of me feels like, God damn it, I wrote these songs and I planned on this date. Yeah. And for me personally, like when I'm getting there, we're recording these songs, and if I'm writing new songs on the day of that, then I've been possessed, because it's not It's just
You always honor the inspiration.
Yeah, but
that's what gets us to where we are.
Yeah.
Don't want to take too much more of your time. I know you.
I got 6 more minutes.
All right. Well, perfect. We end the podcast with one question every time. It's from the movie Almost Famous. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Oh,
but
I love that thing is a wonder. I love that movie.
Awesome. We started out this podcast and like the first several guests, like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But lately everyone's like, oh, I love that movie. So I'm feeling much better about this. But
I bought a director's cut recently that has another 30 minutes of scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have a DVD player, but I can't believe this.
I believe it's called Untitled because that's the Cameron Crowe's original script was Untitled. So the director's cut is actually called Untitled.
I can't wait to see it all.
But yeah, so the question is what William from Almost Famous tries to ask the Billy Crudup character throughout, and then finally gets to at the very end, and that is, what do you love about music?
Yeah.
It's a generic, the most generic question in the world, but I love the answers that every guest gives us. So
that scene at the end where Crudup comes to apologize to the kid, and he pulls up a chair and he says, okay, and he gets his recorder out. So then he repeats the question again.
Yep.
And finally gets the answer, and Crudup pulls up his chair to the bed in this teenager's room, all the teenager stuff around. And I thought what Cameron Crowe was saying was like, when he starts thinking about music, finally opens up to the question, what do you like about music? It's like he's a teenager too. And I think that's one of the things I'd say. It's like it's music is timeless. You can feel the same way. I can feel the same way about some songs that I felt when I was 14. You might, I guess, I love the band Thin Lizzy. It's my favorite, band, even though I think they were cheesy and stuff sometimes. But it's sad. Drugs. My 2 favorite bands, Thin Lizzy and Little Feat, grown up. And both leads died at 34 from heroin and cocaine, from the same, virtually the same thing, which is a great lesson. But you can't explain it. Music, you can't explain. I've heard people say this. I don't know, it's true that vocal in linguistics, there's no explanation for singing. Like, how do we go from talking to sing? We don't know. I don't know if that's true, but it's just music is just inexplicable, and you can be at the lowest of your lows, and there's a song that can get you through moments and nights like that. And there's songs that you just want to hear when you're happy, and music can literally change your day and literally change your waves and your energy. And music points to me to a greater being, to a God, to a creator, because it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Walt.
I enjoy this, Jimmy, and Jules. Thanks, man. Y'all had some really great thoughts and questions, and I don't always enjoy talking about songs, but I did. This was really fun.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice. And we hope to have you back. If not this festival, definitely 2025.
I hope so, man, because I sure like being down there.
Yeah, we'll. This will not be the last of it. You'll be back, I'm sure. So, thank you so much.
Good, safe holidays and all that to both of you and yours.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, bro.
All right.
Bye, y'all.
Have fun watching Elf.